So in this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet the beak because it's a little small and can get a little tricky. But if you need a refresher on any of these techniques, go back to some of the older videos. I'm just going to breeze by some of these things. So right now, I'm making a magic loop. I'm going to put 4 single crochet stitches in it. The rest of the pattern has you put 6 single crochet stitches in a magic loop. This one's even smaller. Alright, so I have 4 single crochet stitches here, and now I'm going to pull on the tail to get rid of that center hole. And now I'm going to do a single crochet stitch in this very first one. And pro tip, if you want to not have to weave in all these yarn tails, the beginning yarn tail you can drape over your hook like so that you're actually crocheting over it as you crochet your second round. I'm gonna redo that because I just split my yarn by mistake. So undoing the stitch a bit. All right, and I'll show you more slow-mo too of what I did with the yarn tail. Right now the yarn tail is behind my hook. I brought it over on top of the hook like a yarn over, and I'm holding it in place with my middle finger and thumb. Then I'm doing a regular yarn over and pull through because I'm making a single crochet stitch. If you want to keep track, you can use the stitch marker again and put it in this very first stitch that you just made, which marks the first stitch of round 2. And then you are gonna do an increased stitch in the next stitch, crocheting over the yarn tail again so that it becomes more and more secure. A single crochet stitch in the third one, and then an increased stitch in the last one. All right, because we did that series of stitches, probably your piece is curving like how mine is curving. And remember, the natural curve is actually with the wrong side facing out. And you can tell because you can see these horizontal bars. We actually want the beak to curve the other way. So huzzah, I'm turning it inside out. And to fasten off, we're gonna do the invisible fasten off, which means taking the stitch marker out, doing a slip stitch, cutting the yarn. I'd say you need about 6 inches, but you probably have some extra yarn, so it doesn't hurt to cut a little more or to leave a little more. And now just pull that yarn tail all the way through and grab your tapestry needle, thread it, and take a look at your circle here. Look at where the yarn tail is coming out of. We are going to skip the following stitch, put the needle from the bottom to the top of the one after that, and then bring it through from the bottom to the top of the top loop only of the stitch that the yarn tail came out of. And we are going through all this effort because we want to make something that looks more like a smooth circle so that the beak, when it gets attached to the penguin body, will look a bit more symmetrical. All right, so then the pattern says to fold the beak in half. So we're just gonna fold it in half like a taco. And it might look a little bit triangular, that's totally fine. Beaks are like that. And now we are going to attach it to the penguin body. So the pattern says to attach it so that the top of it lines up in between the eyes and between round 7 and 8, so over here, and that it should end right above the penguin belly. So when you squish this down, it does look like it's gonna line up that way. So we are going to sew this on like we sewed on, actually not like we sewed on the belly. I'm going to show you a slightly different method. And if your yarn tail is short enough, I would say try to just tuck it into the inside of your beak. If it is too long and unwieldy, cut it so that's a little bit shorter so that you can do this. And let's get sewing. So look at where your yarn tail comes out of and holding your beak on where you want it to actually be on your penguin. Look for the spot on the penguin body that you want this stitch, this penguin beak stitch to line up with, and stick your needle in there. So I'm going to say I want it here. Now you want to bring your needle out on the other side of said stitch in whichever direction you're going to crochet. I'm going to go up and around this way. So now I'm going to stick the needle from the back to the front of the next beak stitch, and then I'm gonna put the needle in exactly the same hole that it just came out of the penguin body. And I'm gonna keep on doing this as I follow the natural curve of this penguin beak along the penguin body. So I'm gonna stick the needle back in, I'm gonna bring it out, not exactly, actually, this one is exactly one stitch away, but a little diagonal. And remember to pull it tight after every stitch. So bring the needle again from the back to the front of the beak stitch, pull it tight, and then put the needle back into the same hole that it just came from. And then move the needle over so you can repeat that with the next stitch that has not been sewn on yet. I'm going to fast forward so you can see what a finished beak looks like. Okay, I have reached the last unworked stitch of the penguin. If your needle isn't coming out of the beak and out of the body, just get to a point where you are. It's okay if you have to sew into the same stitches again. And now we're going to tuck this yarn tail and hide it inside of the penguin body, just like we did for the belly. So in this case, I'm gonna put the needle back in the same hole that it came from, and then out the back of the body, pull, and then since I've got extra, I'm gonna do it again, but point the needle somewhere else in the penguin body, and voila! Beak is sewn on. All you gotta do is cut off this yarn as close as possible to the body, and you're almost there.